Welcome to the 89th episode of the Golf Podcast. Great topic today. We're going to talk about visualization. Mike, we've seen recently how much success Jason Day has had, and not to say that he's the only guy using visualization out there on the course, but it's so obvious when he does, and the cameras have been on him so much, it's kind of highlighted this. So I've been looking forward to talking about this topic for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of take a different stance on the topic, and I might as well jump into it right now because you're going to talk more about the pros of it in the actual discussion tonight. But Frank, I don't know about you, I find it that if I think too much, I always screw up. So I do try, when Jason Day was on fire, after he won the tournament, everyone was trying to be like him out on the course. They were holding the club up. They were trying to be like Day. But, I find it that the more I think, and I played today, and I tried it on the first hole of the day. I just said, let me just focus, because I knew we were going to talk about this tonight. And I think I shanked it like 90-degree angle in the woods. And the guy was like, what were you thinking about? Just hit the ball. So, that's kind of where I fit into the conversation. So.
And that's going to be a good one to cover because there's definitely a difference between visualizing as part of your pre-shot and then, like you said, thinking too much during the swing. Because we've talked about that before. It's just like swing thoughts and try not to have too many, and where your motor skills kind of take over when you're trying to make these small adjustments. So that's an interesting take on it. So we'll definitely cover that a little bit. But one thing I definitely want to point out, you seem like you're playing every day. I mean, I'm following you on social media and I'm getting really jealous, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited because, this is my favorite time of the year to play. I mean, you love the fall golf. I love fall golf. I'm play today, playing Friday, playing Sunday. Actually was able to get a weekend round on the books. The boss allowed me to get out there. So I got that. And then you and I are playing next Wednesday. So I'm really trying to pack it all in. But today was really cool. I wanted to share this because I played down in Spring Lake Golf Club down in New Jersey. Gorgeous little beach resort area. And, we went out. It was 2 foursomes. It was a work kind of event. And they said, you got to hurry up because we're starting the senior outing behind you. The guys are playing the hickory shaft outing.
Really?
All they use is hickory shafts and the feather balls, I guess, the old school balls from like the 1800s. And these guys were all in their 70s, 60s, 80s, gray hair. They came in ties and the sweaters and the Payne Stewart socks. I mean, it was so cool. The little bags that only held like 3 clubs in it. So, I see those guys behind me as I'm going through the course and watching them. It was so unique. I've never seen it before.
Oh, that's a missed opportunity. You should have snagged a picture with them. The listeners would have loved that.
I know, I should have. But I played great today. I was so focused. I shot 2 strokes away from my best score. I had about 6 1-putts today. One was a 60-foot hard-turning birdie putt off the green on a par 5. I might have had like 23 putts the whole day. Everyone was just calling me the putting king all day. They're like, you're on fire all day. It was great. It was one of those days. So hopefully it transitions for the next few rounds.
Yeah, it just shows you how much putting translates to your better rounds. I mean, anytime you hear anybody talk about shooting one of their better rounds, they're always going to say their putting was on. It's just so important. It's just so important for that score. But that's awesome. I mean, it's always great to play this well towards the end of the season. It kind of leaves you with that good mindset going into the off season and getting ready for next year. So that's really excellent. I've been trying to get out there. I actually been the opposite. I really haven't had much time to get out. I played last weekend. It was the first time in 2 weeks. Just a lot of stuff, rainouts, things like that. The one thing I don't like about the fall golf, as beautiful as it is these days are getting shorter and colder. We had frost delay the other day. I can't quite get out there after work. It's dark by whatever time, 6:30, 7 o'clock. So that's tough. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting out there. We're going to play next Wednesday. That'll be fun. We'll send some Twitter.
How are the greens out
there? They just aerated them. That's the other thing that's a little bit tough towards the end of the season, but they should be perfectly fine by next Wednesday when we get out.
All right, perfect. So I'm trying to look for excuses now. You hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. It should be exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. All right, so let's jump into this topic because we got a lot to cover, and I really want to touch on a few things for people who haven't tried this before. Now, with visualization, there's a couple things that I want to preface. We've talked about it a little bit before in different areas. One thing that I've said quite a few times, so I'm sure anybody who's a regular listener is probably tired of me hearing me talk about it, but that book Zen Golf was the first where I first started my visualizations was from reading that. There was a lot of, great coverage in there, a lot more than what we can cover tonight. So if you don't, get a chance to like get through all of it, definitely check out that book. I'll link to it in the show notes. It's a really helpful one. But why this is kind of coming to the forefront, I mean, there's no doubt and no denying Jason Day was dominant towards the end of the season. From him picking up his first major this year to cruising through the FedEx Cup playoffs and picking up 2 more wins there. But what that does is it kind of brings that spotlight to them. There's a lot of guys you don't get to see, playing if they're not in the lead, so to speak. But one thing that we see is like Mike, like you're talking about, that very clear visualization where you see Jason Day stand behind the ball and actually, kind of half close his eyes, and that he's visualizing his shot and he's just kind of locked in. So it just kind of tells you he's not the only one out there doing it. A lot of pros talk about it, a lot of teaching pros, and you see a lot of the other pros doing it. And so really kind of questions to be said here is if it's a key to his success, of which he's had so much, isn't it something that you should consider, adding to your game? And in a word, yes. So first thing, let's do this. Let's kind of talk about what visualization is, because that's a big thing. And I know that came up in that book, Zen Golf, where he said a lot of guys will say, well, I don't know how to visualize. And then they'll talk about picturing their shot or picturing their putt. And they're saying, well, you are visualizing there. So it's important to understand. So, the process of picturing the ball flight of your shot before you actually hit it, that's called visualization or visualizing your shot or whatever you want to call it. It might not seem like picturing your shots can do much for your game, but it's actually a very powerful way to improve your performance. So you're not just saying, I know there might be some people thinking, well, Jason Day, we're talking about him as our example. He's so talented, it doesn't matter whether he visualizes or not. It's not going to make a difference in my game, but it's not true. Actually, I found this quote from Psychology Today that I want to read because I think it puts this more perfectly than I can put it. And they had done a little bit of a study on the whole idea of visualization, especially as it relates to sports. There's a lot of greats from, the last 50 years that have been using it. Tiger Woods is a big one. Jack Nicklaus is another. So they did a study on it, and let me just kind of read this off because you'll be able to get what I said. Noted as one form of mental rehearsal, visualization has been popular since the Soviets started using it back in the 1970s to compete in sports. Now, many athletes employ this technique, including Tiger Woods, who has been using it since his preteen years. Seasoned athletes use vivid, highly detailed internal images and run-throughs of the entire performance, engaging all their senses in their mental rehearsal. And they combine their knowledge of the sports venue with the mental rehearsal. World champion golfer Jack Nicklaus said, I never hit a shot, not even in practice, without having a very sharp, in-focus picture in my head. Even heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali used different mental practices to enhance his performance in the ring, such as affirmation, visualization, mental rehearsal, self-confirmation, and perhaps the most powerful epigram of personal worth ever uttered, I am the greatest. So that was from Psychology Today. And it shows you, I mean, they, like I said, dating back to some of the studies that they did and the Soviets using it, Olympics and things like that. It just shows it's very powerful. There's a lot to be said for it. It's used in many different sports, and golf being one of those extremely mental sports, it shows you why it can be so important. And this is something you can do tee to green. So Mike, you talked about in your example, with the driver, but I use it heavily with putting. I find when I'm putting the best, I'm visualizing those putts dropping. How about you?
Well, after you read the definition, I kind of have to go back and take some of the things I said, earlier back, because the reason I'm putting so well is, now that I know about it, visualization,
Yeah.
That 60-foot putt, I visualize that in my head. I visualize what spot to pick, on this part of the green, where it was going to start breaking, where I wanted to leave the ball so it can start breaking down to the hole. So essentially, Frank, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I was visualizing that, correct?
Right, exactly.
So there you go. So I can't, throw the whole, concept out, because I'm one heck of a putter right now because of visualization.
Right. And that's what goes back to, like I said, that quote originally from the book, which first got me thinking, was so many people who thought they weren't using visualization didn't realize during those times when they were maybe using other words for it, like locked in or whatever it was, they are actually employing it. And Here, and what we're going to talk about, the two different techniques, it's largely part of your pre-shot routine. It's more planning than it is execution. Think of it that way. So I think where you were getting tripped up there is you're thinking that it's almost during the execution, during the swing itself. Whereas I'm saying this is more so creating that mental picture that your mind makes so that your body can replicate. Because you would be surprised how much your body will listen, so to speak, as you visualize that shot. And this is something that as you get out there and you practice it and you try it out, you'll start to see and start to almost be a little bit amazed that when you visualize something, your body just kind of makes that happen. And here's a great example of that, of how it can go the wrong way. Everyone has done this at some point. They've used visualization to their detriment when that last minute thought they have where they think, visualize the ball going in the water. Or I don't want to go to the ball to go in the water. Or I don't want it to go in the woods, right? But you're not realizing that what your brain is telling your body to do. And then what happens? It goes in the water. So use it the other way. Use it as a positive of visualizing where you do want the shot to go rather than where you don't. Because what happens is sometimes the body, when it's actually going through and performing that swing, it doesn't always think of the do or the don't. What's happening is it's thinking of the last image that was in your mind. And if the last image that was in your mind was the ball going into the water, well, no surprise that that's what that happens. So that's a big part of it. I try very hard to stand behind the ball, visualize my shot. I try to see the whole thing all the way through, which we'll talk about in a moment about the different techniques and actually see that ball landing. But what they talk about here is the more detailed you can be with your visualization, the better it's going to work for you. So not just seeing like, oh, I want the ball to be there. I want to be in that spot on the fairway, but actually seeing the ball flight in your mind, seeing whether, is it a hook? Is it a draw? Is it a fade? Is it a high shot? Is it a low shot? And then actually kind of creating that picture can be very important. Another thing, Mike, that I want to bring up was, this is something we talked about in a previous episode, but the power of this, especially from putting. Remember I talked about that study and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I can't quote it exactly here. And I don't remember which college did this, but where they talked about where they had half the team visualizing before each putt, visualizing their putt dropping, into the hole. And then another team visualizing it, just missing. And what they found was that the guys who visualized the putt actually dropping improved their putting by something like 40%, some great number. But what really kind of drove it home was the guys who visualized missing, actually their putting got about 20% worse. So that was about a 60% swing. So it really shows the importance of that. All right. And a lot of examples are out there. I mean, I've heard examples of guys where they were like, how did I lip out like 8 putts today? I couldn't hit that lip 8 times if I tried. And then they kind of like went back through their mind and they realized they were reading so much into it. They were actually visualizing right side of the cup or whatever, rather than visualizing that ball pouring into the middle of the cup. So it could be very important. There's so many different things to it. And there's only so much we can say. It's more getting out there and trying it and seeing how it works for you. So with that said, let's go over the 2 visualization techniques. I mean, there are probably others, but I'm going to say these are the 2 most mainstream and most important ones and 2 most commonly used. The first one is the approach you see Jason Day using. So in that method, you actually stand behind the ball and visualize the entire flight of the shot prior to walking up and taking your stance. So if you want to use this method effectively, it's crucial that you take your time to picture the shot in great detail. So even if you need to stand behind the ball for an extra couple seconds or whatever it may be, it's not something you want to do halfway. You really need to commit to the process. I know a lot of guys feel rushed out there, so they kind of rush through that pre-shot routine. Right. But realistically, and with practice, which we'll talk about how to practice this in a moment, but with practice, you can kind of move through this a lot quicker. You're not going to be staying there for 2-3 minutes. We're just talking about taking 5 seconds. I mean, think about a drive is the longest shot. So think about how long that ball flight is, maybe 5-7 seconds. You could picture the entire thing without holding yourself up. So what you want to do is start by looking down at the ball and then just picture it taking off into the air, floating all the way to your target. Picture the curve of the shot in the air, how it's going to bounce. I mean, there's no way you can be too detailed, is what I'm trying to, the point I'm trying to make here. The more detailed, the better. So don't be afraid to even close your eyes if that helps. Some guys say, like, I have trouble visualizing. Close your eyes. Jason Day does it. and nobody's picking on him when he's beaten up on the field by 6 strokes. So make sure, you do that and give that a good try. All right. That's the method I use. Now, Mike, what we're talking about, the second method might be a little bit closer to what you were doing here. But they talk about the option is to visualize your shot when you're already in your stance. Some people find this to be a little bit easier because you're already standing over the ball. You can kind of get a little bit closer mentally to the shot. With this technique, you want to align the club, set your feet in position, and then look up and visualize that shot. But everything else remains the same. You still want to visualize the whole way. Now, the advantage here, it's a little bit faster. So if you're, so if you're worried about the pace of play and you don't want to be standing behind it, especially in the beginning when you're first doing this, you may want to try this method, but nothing differs when it comes to the visualization. You still want to make sure you visualize the whole thing. So Mike, does that make sense? Is that a little bit closer to what you were thinking about today?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where I went wrong because I'm more confident in the second approach in my game. I mean, Ricky Fowler kind of uses that approach. You'll see him get up to the ball, he'll bring the club back halfway, he'll bring it back to the ball. So he does his visualization, I think, over the ball. This is where I went wrong, and I want to give a very quick example because maybe I shouldn't shoot this whole concept down. Now that I'm thinking more about it and we're talking our way through it. I think it was, I don't know, the 8th hole or so. It was like a 490-yard par 5, pretty short, reachable par 5, with 2 good shots. I ended up, Frankie, you're gonna I hope you don't fall out of your chair. I measured it. I had a 337-yard drive off the tee. I measured it.
Wow.
I was downwind. I caught every bit of it, dead center of the fairway. I was staring down like a 150 shot into the green.
Wow.
And the 4 caddy was like, make sure you put the ball on the back. There's a slope in the front. You don't want to come short. I said, okay, that's all great and good. I ended up doing the whole Jason Day. I don't do this normally. I stood behind it. I looked at my surroundings. I visualized where I wanted to put the ball. I ended up putting it like 20 yards right at the green. I ended up in a bunker. I ended up bogeying the hole when I was 150 out on my second shot in a par 5. So, I did something. I mean, so maybe step 1 doesn't work for me. I should just stick with step 2. I just think step 1 or the first technique is too much thinking for me.
Okay. It can be a very personal thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that just kind of is playing through my mind, I'm thinking out loud as you're saying this, is one thing we know to be true is that when you change anything up too dramatically, it can be like that. They can take an adjustment period.
Sure.
So I think what might have happened is while you had a noble idea of trying to visualize it, you might have been adding more pressure to yourself and more pressure to the shot by doing something you don't normally do. So the visualization was taking you actually out of your normal pre-shot routine. So that's where I want to talk about in a minute is that the importance of practicing it. So like right here in just looking at the article, which I'll link to in the show notes, you can get to that by going to golficity.com/episode 89. We talk about rehearsing your visualization. And it says right here, Mike, it's kind of funny. It says you wouldn't go directly out on the course and try out a new swing technique. So you shouldn't go out directly on the course trying to learn how to visualize your shots either. So that's what happened. I mean, you were clearly facing down a really big opportunity there to reach that green in 2. So you're saying, let me pull out the stops and try something here. But what we're kind of arguing is, especially when you start this in the beginning, it's good to maybe try this on the range first because it is mental, physical, whatever. It's still getting away from your normal routine. So it can be something that can mix things up for you. So that's what I think, Mike. I don't think that this should be something that you rule out as not working for you so much as say, let me commit to practicing that on the range or putting it into my normal routine before I just employ it on the more important shots. Because like I said, you might be subconsciously building more pressure than you think.
Right. I mean, it was probably that. I mean, it was also a combination of things. There might have been overexcitement for the opportunity I had to get on in 2. I mean, it could have been a number of things. Could have been just a straight miss hit. But I should definitely put in a few buckets, if not more, of balls practice to do this.
Yeah. And that's the thing. With the range, it's a great place to do it because there are targets out there. There's flags, things like that. And you can really
take your time.
Yeah. And you can stress your mental ability to visualize by actually visualizing a golf course out there.
Sure.
A lot of people will do that, especially if they're warming up to play around. A lot of people will visualize the first hole so that they can kind of get that, like we talked about, those first tee jitters a couple episodes back and visualize getting off the tee. So Remember, good visualization, like a good swing, it takes practice, it takes repetition, both of which you can find on the range. So what we're going to do right here is just kind of run through some things and some ways that you can start to use it and some steps you can put in there. Again, visualization is going to be very unique to each person and how you perform it, but there's going to be some common factors in there that I want to go over. First thing first, always very important, even if you weren't visualizing, important part of the game is just picking a target. So if you're on the range, we're going to use that as an example, select that target, pick the appropriate club, going through your club selection process just as though you do on the range. So if you hit a 7-iron 150 yards normally, use your 7-iron, aim for that 150 marker. The next thing is actually visualize the shot. So prior to hitting the shot, you want to visualize that entire ball flight from start to finish. Are you going to hit a draw, a fade, whatever it may be? How high, like I talked about, is it going to be a high shot, low shot? What, flight path is it going to take? Think about these details in advance and factor them into your visualization. Now, Mike, here's something that helped me the most because I needed a mental image to start doing this. Mm-hmm. And anybody who watches, the PGA Tour on the weekend has seen, what's it called? The Pro Tracer.
Sure. That friendly blue line on the TV tells you where the ball goes.
That's right. Or that might be the brand name for that, or there's something called the flight track or whatever it may be.
Right.
But that blue line, because you can't see the ball otherwise, and it helps you do it. But what I like is that blue line kind of stays and shows the whole ball flight. Mm-hmm. I kind of turn that into something that I do in my mind. And I try to kind of create that and like draw that line in the air with my mind before I hit the shot. Mm-hmm. That helps me to kind of visualize a fade, a draw, height, ball flight, whatever it may be. So it's kind of like creating your own Pro Tracer in your mind. And that I find is one of the best ways to describe what a good visualization looks like, because you actually see that shot before it happens. And that's what I try to do. And think about it, that only takes a couple seconds or whatever it may be. But I'll actually do that. I'll visualize it like a pro. And I do that a lot with putting too. So that the reason I use that is I envision, let's say there was a Pro Tracer on putting. After the ball drops in the hole, you would see that line that it traveled, the whole way that ball traveled. And I like that because what that does is it creates in my mind that line. I just kind of trace it backwards and I see that's the line I want to putt on. You get what I'm saying? So it kind of creates that for me.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, right. So imagine you putt and you're watching it in your mind. You're watching it actually creating this line across the green where it's whatever it may be. It's going through the undulations and it's dropping in the hole. Visualizing it dropping right in the middle of the hole. Mm-hmm. Now just take that line and trace it back in your mind through all the way back from the cup back to the ball, and now just. That's where you let your body take over. Your mind has told your body what to do. Let your body take over. No thinking during the shot or anything like that. That's where you kind of just relax and let it happen. You've created your plan. Now let it happen. And that honestly is one of the biggest improvements or ways that I've mentally improved my game is just by doing that small little thing.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try it out on the course. I mean, the green I think I have down, but mid game and long game, I'm going to definitely try to draw that blue line in my mind for sure.
That's right. Draw that blue line. Mm-hmm. So the next step is after you've drawn that line, so to speak, is just let it fly. With your visualization complete, all you want to do is go ahead and hit the shot. Watch the ball fly through the air and then compare it to the picture you created in your head. So obviously the goal is going to be to replicate your shot you drew with your visualization. And what you'll find is with time, you'll get better and better at it. Mm-hmm. But the nice part too is that because you've gone ahead and visualized it and you're not just reacting to what the shot was, you're able to compare execution versus plan. And what that really helps is like kind of a peripheral thing that this will help is it'll help you with your practice. It'll help you if you're working with a coach. You can say, listen, my shot plan is that I want to hit this shot and it's just not happening. It's a lot better than saying, I don't know, I'm going up there, I'm swinging and this is where the ball is going. Well, that's reacting. Instead, I'm saying, this is what my plan was. That's not what's happening. Or you can kind of see as you improve slowly because you're saying, hey, my actual flight path is getting closer and closer to my visualization. I'm doing something the right way. So
Hmm.
that's going to be important. And the last step is just repeat. You know,
Mhm.
you got to do it over and over through your practice session. It's going to require patience to practice this way, but the benefits are worth it over time. And don't get discouraged if your ball flight doesn't match that visualization right away, like we were just talking about, or from time to time. You know, everyone hits a bad shot now and then, even the pros, no matter how good their visualization is, it happens. But the idea is to stick with it because the benefits are going to certainly outweigh the time it takes to process this into your routine. You know, it doesn't cost anything to put this into your routine, so to speak. So you'll see those benefits, but it's going to take time. And eventually what's going to happen is it's going to become a natural part of your pre-shot routine, and it'll actually feel different and awkward to get away from it rather than where it feels right now different and awkward to do it.
Right.
Okay. So that's going to be something that's going to be really important.
Yeah.
Mike, anything else before we get into some final thoughts on this?
No, I think you sold me on going back and giving it another try. So,
Well, look, I mean,
Yeah.
it's obvious it can be discouraging if you don't have immediate results with it, but that's why I want to kind of dispel that rumor. You
Yeah.
might not have immediate results with this. It takes some time, but I want to talk about the importance of it because of that reason, because there are benefits. Like I said, people are using it in all sports. One thing I like to compare a lot, again, is like that foul shot in basketball. You can bet that all the best, basketball players are visualizing that ball going in before they're doing it, before they're making that shot, because that's a little bit more like golf in that you have time. There's a lot of sports like baseball or whatever it may be where you have to react. You don't have that time to think. And that could be good or bad thing. With golf, we say sometimes having all that time is the hard part because of that mental part. But you have also that opportunity to visualize, where in other sports, let's say football, you can't visualize yourself making a catch. You don't have time. You got to just practice and make it happen. But here you do. And there's other areas in different sports where you do have time to do that. Trust me, anything like archery, bowling, whatever, where you were, have the time to set and take your aim, people are using visualization. So final thoughts, will adding visualization to your golf game suddenly turn your slice into a powerful draw? No, probably not. But when you visualize each shot that you hit throughout the round, you can improve your consistency by having a very specific plan for your ball flight. And Mike, who doesn't want that consistency? We talk about it all the time.
Of course.
So this is one of those keys there. So most amateur golfers, they simply walk up to the ball, they swing away. It's just really not an effective way to play great golf. So if you want to get to that point where you're crossing that bridge into great golf, visualization, it's not going to turn you into the next PGA champion, but it's certainly going to go a long way towards that consistency and that lower scores and really playing this game smart. So that's going to be a really important thing. So Mike, I'm excited to hear like how, if you do get back out there and try it, kind of some of the results.
Yeah, definitely. You know what? I'll put some work in. I usually like to hit the range if I can get some free time between now and when you and I get out there and play. I mean, I'm going to be pretty obvious about it just to be funny on the first hole. How about that? I'll just stand up there like Jason with the club in the hand. No, but it should be fun out there. I'm definitely going to give it a shot, though. I think I can make this work and utilize this in my game for sure.
Right. Well, whatever you have to do. I mean, if you have to use a physical trigger to remind you, like kind of like what he does or whatever, you can do it. Like I said, it's a very personal thing. No two people are going to do it the same, but there's a lot of ways that you can do it. So
Right.
Like I said, I've been doing it for about a year now. It's really been helping, and it's a work in progress always. It's not something that's just like set in stone,
Right.
That's the way you kind of have to treat it. All right, so that's everything we have. Another, great topic. Like I said, it was a lot to cover today. We're going to have some really interesting and some surprise guests, like we talked about, coming up in the next couple episodes. Lots of stuff happening on Golficity. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, do so. And if you really want to stay up to date, I definitely encourage you to subscribe to our free newsletter. You can get to that by just going to golficity.com/subscribe. Put in your email there. Like I said, it's free. We don't overwhelm you with emails. There's just once a week you're going to get a summary of everything that's going on. It's a great way to not miss a podcast episode because you get nice reminders there, all the latest articles, because there's a lot from news to just kind of just for fun stuff that's going on and all the instructional content. And the other thing too that's really nice is when you sign up for the newsletter, you get those really important instructional articles just sent directly to you. So it's a little reminder, once a week of something you can kind of work on and improve. So I encourage you to check that out. Like I said, it's free. Why not? Just put your email in there and you'll be able to get that. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Twitter. Just search Golficity, will pop up. And that's another way to stay in touch because, every once in a while you'll see that we'll shoot out another link to one of the most recent articles. And like I said, there's a lot coming out. There's a lot to talk about and a lot of ways to improve your game. All right, Mike, you have anything else before we wrap it up tonight?
No, I'm all set in this side.
All right, great. So again, want to thank everyone for listening. Catch us on the web at golficity.com, and you can always get in touch with Mike and myself by emailing us at podcast@golficity.com. And until then, we will see you again next week, and hit them straight. We'll see you then.